Spurge. My full name is Spurgeon Reynolds Carter III. I guess DJ as Spurge and also have a sort of rock pop project called Elise.
Nice, nice. So, where we are here in Utica, Brooklyn. Have you always lived here?
Yeah, I've lived in New York for about 10 years. I lived in my current place for 4 years now, and I've bounced around. Done the Bushwick Hall. Was over living with a bunch of Pratt students over there. But yeah, I've been here for 4 years, and I'm from Baltimore, and was kind of just really looking for a place that kind of reminded me of Baltimore in Brooklyn. And I feel like this, Crown Heights, where we're at, Weeksville, has a lot of that sentiment. Like majority black community, and you can have really lovely quiet streets like the one that we're on right now, and then you can go 2 blocks and it's kind of hot and loud and just more vibrant, and that felt really important to me to sort of be around, to be grounded in something that feels a bit like home, in a place that is my adopted home now, having been in New York for about a decade.
Cool. So then that means home is important to you.
Definitely, yeah. I think a sense of centering.
What was your home life like? What's your setup? You got siblings?
Yeah, the build, the model, the make.
Yeah.
I've I guess 2 parents that are still in the same house that I grew up in. They're both business owners, entrepreneurs. So there's kind of always been an encouragement to sort of go out and do it on your own, make it. Or really just more do whatever's going to make you happy more than anything else than any particular path. They were pretty adamant and encouraging about just trying to find what makes you happy in life. And I think that's kind of pervaded and sort of exuded in an exemplary in all of my siblings. I have an older brother who's 8 years older than me, myself, a sister that's 2 years younger, than a brother that's 4 years younger. And yeah, we all kind of, sort of do our own things, but definitely creativity and an expression are pretty important to us as a familial unit.
That's amazing. Everyone can't tell that story or have that testimony. So that's amazing. What do your parents do? Did they tell you, or did they also show you by what they were doing that they were loving what they do?
I think a lot of it was just showing as well, especially for my dad is primarily I guess contractor. He's sort of your classic every he's working with his hands, so grass exactly grass cutting demo. He had a store called the Big Stomach in East Baltimore. Growing up, it was kind of a convenience store, Bodega. So growing up, we used to just run around and play there. And he's try to own property, things like that. So he's always just trying his hands at things. Even now, he recently in the last I think year or so opened up a car wash, kind of by where our house is out in the county. And I was just at home for the 4th and didn't get to see him that much because he was busy one day, and then when I went to go say goodbye before I drove back up here, he was finished with the car wash, the day was over. But then he went and hung out. I went to go meet him to say goodbye at another friend who was doing car detailing. He was there because he was just trying to learn. So he's also a person that's constantly trying to learn. And same with my mom. She's I guess her main business has been she's a HR systems consultant for large companies. So kind of she's always been sort of a consultant, contractor, where she'll get attached to these large companies to help them make sense of their payroll systems. And I feel when I was young, I was always I don't know what that is, but you get to travel a lot. And she was always working from home, even when I was young. So the concept of working from home has kind of been pretty familiar even before the pandemic, because she was just, she had her little office. She was always there, which was beneficial because, she'd be able to help make meals and stuff. But there was also a lot of, I guess probably why I am the way that I am now, a lot of boundaries around working in your domestic space too, about all right, I'm at work even though I'm at home,
Gotcha.
So yeah.
So you had a parent who was very much of a doer and a parent who was very much of a listener.
Yeah, I would say both doers for sure, because even my mom in the same, I guess 5 years ago, it was just her anniversary. She started a natural hair care and beauty, like brick and mortar in, like in Maryland. And so they're both just like very much doers in a lot of ways, I think. And, there's been a lot of vocal encouragement to sort of like do what we love as well. But a lot of it's also just been like, watching them kind of go through the ups and downs of something, like trying to like start something on your own. Like there would be like, periods of time where like, there might be like less money coming in, or, and like obviously a bit more struggle, but then other moments where it's sort of like peaks, and kind of like versus something like a stability of maybe like a corporate job on its own, or like something where, you have less autonomy, but more security, isn't something that I really witnessed. And so what's ingrained in me is kind of similar, like sort of going for something where you might have more autonomy, but less stability.
So you know how to work in uncertainty.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I mean, still anxiety, like I think anybody with instability, but yeah, it's something that I feel more comfortable with. Or I think I was having a conversation with a friend, Travis, recently about the capacity to be delusional. Like, sort of, I think it's important with our dreams to be deluded, like, because you don't know, there's no path forward with trying to like achieve your dreams. Like you're figuring it out, so it like takes a bit of like, even though I don't know how this is going to like go forward, I have to be a bit delusional about it and trust that it will kind of like manifest in the way that I want it to. And like, versus like reality in life, and obviously relationship and family, like there should be a sense of groundedness and sort of like being real about how you're feeling or what you're thinking, or sort of how you're moving with like other people. But like something like with your dreams, like that's something where you want to kind of like keep that deludedness. Like being grounded with your dreams is not, I think that's what's going to create more anxiety, because you kind of have to like believe, of
Going
course.
back and forth between deluded and reality.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a good thought. I mean, because like who's deciding what is delusional? And then when you achieve it, it's no longer delusional, it's reality.
Yeah, exactly. You're sort of working towards a reality that you it's aspirational. Yeah. So something like with dreams, or, like I think, anything that's a gamble, like work, that's something that you kind of have to have like a good balance of. Like you need that, but obviously you can't be all the way delusional. You don't want to be like 10 years in living on your parents' couch being like, I'm gonna be a rapper. Like hopefully, you can be, but hopefully you're putting in the effort behind it.
Right.
It's also that balance of like, being delusional enough to sort of have the drive, even though you might not have all of the steps forward, but then also obviously a practicality enough to be able to be like, well, how am I going to get there, figure it out? And a balance of the two, I think, is really key.
Super. So then how do we get from like growing up everyday life to music? When did DJing become a part of your life?
I always was into music. I went to church, so I was like, for a little while, sung in the choir. Didn't like it personally. And same,
What'd you
I mean,
sing? Alto, tenor?
I think tenor.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But it was just like I hated going to choir practice. Like I was like, I have to go to church on days that aren't church. Like, why would I do that? So I was like, not really. Yeah, I didn't stick with that long. But I music was like definitely woven in and out. I didn't have like necessarily a interactive musical family. Like there wasn't like a piano or anything at home. But my mom was always playing gospel, and my dad also loved like country and things like that. So it was like getting a good variety, and having an older brother is always helpful. I remember listening to like Jay-Z and all this stuff and thinking it was like so cool. So I had always a fascination with music, and I think particularly going to a private majority white like middle and like high school too, also sort of like pushed me towards a lot of like classic rock and a lot of these sort of like other genres that I might not have been getting in like other areas, to try to like also just fit in, of course, more than anything.
Right.
But I found I loved like Linkin Park, like all of that type of stuff. But really it didn't happen. I guess like having an interactive relationship to music happened for me when I think it was like in ninth or 10th grade. So it was probably like 14, 15. And I heard Justice's Cross, which is like what I have here is my little 18-year-old.
Let's see it.
Just like my little 18-year-old tattoo.
Nice.
But it's just like a still stands up, but great electronic album that sort of like merges rock and pop and like punk sensibilities through like electronic music, and I remember hearing it and just kind of having my mind blown, being like, how are these sounds being made? Like, kind of like having synth riffs that feel like guitars. It was just kind of like rewiring in a way that was like really interesting. And I think having not, at that point really had played any instruments or anything, making electronic music through the computer felt more accessible and approachable and exciting. So I started to do that. And I remember I have like I don't even remember what they're called now, but there was like these like little mini PCs that existed back then. I remember I had, and I had like Reason 4, which is like a, just like a music production program. And I was just like making electronic music, and that was kind of my entry point, just sort of more like the sounds. Like I was just intrigued by like making the sounds and the production aspect. So did that, started DJing in high school as well, because this was like the time where like music blogs were really big, and I was seeing like Justice and like all of these other like, European motherfuckers like DJing. I was like, I want to do that. So I bought a little console, did that. I remember for a like big high school field party, I like bought it out. I was like, hey, can I DJ? And they're like, yeah, sure. We don't really. I was like, fine. And I set up and DJ, and I was like, I love this. This is great. So I did that. And then, I went to college in North Carolina and pretty immediately defined myself as like a DJ and became kind of like the campus DJ, and people would book me like every weekend to play and stuff like that. So did that. I love that. And my dream at that point was just to be a big EDM DJ, basically. I was like, I just want to like do that. I started coming up to New York in the summers, DJing in like, Lower East Side on First Ave.
How did you get from North Carolina, even Baltimore, to New York? Like, what made you say, I want to go to New York and DJ?
Well, I just knew that there was like, there was a music industry there. Like, North Carolina was great, but it was like I was like, a bit of a big fish in a small pond, and trying to like just book stuff in my college, which was like great, but I like wanted to be in the the culture. I wanted to be in like around where a lot of the music was was happening, it seemed. And
so New York was always your aim.
Yeah, it just made sense. So I like ended up getting an internship. I got 2 internships. One off of Craigslist, and this is like Craigslist like 2010.
Internship off of Craigslist.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But I found this internship with this dude who like had a band, and he had like a record label, which it's mostly just him putting out his own music through, which I do that now, so I get it. But he it was like me and this other intern. It was like over on like I think like Avenue A, and it was in his apartment, and we were basically just sending out like emails about his band. And on that first day, like I remember he like gave me a like fucking bong to rip, and I got like really high while sending out these emails, and it's like, this is not the work environment I want to be in. I was like, seems like nothing's gonna come from this. So
Being high, send the emails. I wonder how many typos went out.
Possibly, many, but more was also just I'm like, I'm not really gonna meet people here doing this. I get the sense, So I ended up getting an interview at Atlantic Records for an internship, and getting that, and did that for the summer, which was like cool to meet a bunch of people.
How'd you get that internship?
I remember pleading to my mom about like, I think that day, like that first week of being in New York, being like, I can't do this internship seems like it's just like going to be a waste. And she had like a friend who had a sorority sister who worked there, and she she worked her like motherly connections, and was able, I think I had applied already or something, and then like hadn't heard back, and she was able to kind of like push it forward. She, God bless mom for that.
Yeah.
But ended up doing a summer internship there, loving it. And then that was kind of my like initial engagement with like interacting with New York.
And what's the name of this company that you did it with again?
That was with Atlantic Records.
Atlantic Records.
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
Sounds big.
Yeah. One of the, I guess, still like one of the like 4 major record labels. I can't remember what the big ones are now.
So what did you do there? Like, you got there on your first day, they come in, and you go where? You do what?
I was just an assistant to this person who, I think it was like urban radio is what I was doing. So I was kind of like, just like sending out radio charts, like very like basic admin work. But she ended up getting caught, like I think for like money laundering or something, or one of those things. A couple years later, which made sense because she just didn't do shit. So she basically like, I remember she was just like really beautiful and also really mean. And I was like, 18. So it's kind of just like, sure, yeah, we're going to do this. She would just like tell me to do some shit, and I would see her just online shopping all day basically. So I was doing like a little bit of stuff, but not that much. And I was like an eager 18-year-old. So I like, wanted to do more work. And I actually ended up walking through the offices, and there was the like Big Beat, which was like a, kind of like re-emerging sub-label that focused on, it was a lot of like, I guess like New York garage in like 90s and things of the sort, and like house. So for me, electronic music, I was like, I like that. I like walked in and was like, hey, if you guys need any help, let me know. And I started helping them out on top of my initial job. And that, yeah, they at that time were like signing, this is like, yeah, again, 2010, 2011. They just signed like Skrillex, who was at this point unknown. And like through that summer internship, his first EP came out and won the Grammy, and sort of this whole like big dubstep EDM explosion happened. So I was able to help with that, and sort of like, especially because like they didn't have an internship and it was like 2 or 3 people.
Taking initiative and getting somewhere, that's what's up.
Yes, exactly. So it was cool. And then I remember I tried to like keep it up when I went back to school, but it was too much work to do, so sort of ended there. But yeah, basically I shuttled through school. I did a study in London, which was really cool. I went clubbing and did a bunch of that. But more or less I was just like in school, like, making music, but not really feeling like I had a sound or anything. And I think that's something that like, if you want to do something, I don't think it needs to be figured out. It's like something that I would express to people, is like, if you just know you want to do something, sometimes like give yourself time and space. Where like I was DJing a bunch, I knew I wanted to make music, I was producing, but like none of it was really feeling like right, like me. And my plan was like, I want to come to New York, work in the music industry, like, like as long as you're working on yourself, like, something that's going to feel right in terms of your expression will come. So obviously, to me, what felt important was also like building a network and people around that could like also like support me for when that moment comes. And obviously you can just kind of integrate into the larger industry, because I know many musicians who are like brilliant and like wonderful and make great art, but like they don't have that other part of like a network, or sort of like, sort of like, what do you do with the music once you make it? So in my mind, I was kind of like, I'll move and like kind of just like start working in the industry, and like on my off time, like be in my little bedroom studio, like working on stuff and like trying to like build towards something that feels like right in terms of expression for me.
So when establishing that network and engaging with other musicians, how do you cope with like conversation when it's like if they ask you about you, and if you haven't found that your sense yet, how do you engage? How do you deal with the imposter syndrome in that?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't think that it's a hard thing. I think like, I don't know. I was like making music. I was messing around. I did a lot of, I'm sure like same with like other, students or people or peers, where like you just mess around. Where like I have so many music sessions with people that like don't go anywhere, but like it's also part of that process of sort of like, you learn from every person you work with. So like people might be like, oh, like, what do you do? I'm like, I make music. I'm also like, yeah, I like, work here or do this or whatever. And you can kind of like explain yourself. But I mean, I basically spent the last several, almost like most of the decade jumping around in different positions, where I was like, doing a lot of like studio engineering for a while, doing a lot of like, like I said, record label stuff, also like music touring. So just bouncing around, and like, everybody, I feel like everybody's, the question you always get when people are like, oh, you still do music? Like, like people know you do it, but like, yeah, I think that you have to, part of it is like, you have to really like come to embrace yourself and like be an advocate for yourself. Like, I think being a creative person, the biggest challenge is like getting over feeling silly promoting yourself or talking about yourself. And that can come with even like the imposter syndrome of like, you have to believe in yourself. Like, a lot of people make stuff that's like garbage, but they like obviously are like really good at like selling themselves, or like sort of like just being advocates of themselves, and that can like make the difference. And I think that like that's something that I've learned through like a lot of the stuff that I was making like 8 years ago, whatever, like 10 years ago, wasn't great, and like it wasn't bad either. Like it was just what it is. And part of like art is also just a process of where you're at. So like I could have put it out. I think some of it was probably my confidence level, and like what you're saying, some of the like imposter syndrome of like, this probably isn't that good, or like, or like, I don't know, like, yeah, it doesn't feel like me. And I'm at a point where now I'm making stuff that feels more like me, and feels like it's a culmination of like, years of like getting to a place of being able to express how I want to. And I think like that is also like, what's good is sort of like checking in about what your expectations are of your creative journey. Like, do you want something that's going to be perfect? I think like so many of us have been like, unfortunately, struck by the like Frank Ocean syndrome of like, like Hideaway, or like, I was just listening to Anti the other day, like Rihanna, like, you know, like of like these like, you know, formed artists who have a lot of resources who can like go away, come back with this like perfect, like beautiful piece of art and then go away again. And that's a lot of, I think, you know, I know like a lot of friends who that's the expectation of like it has to be like pivotal, amazing, perfect. But there's something nice about, I think that's where like TikTok and like a lot of these platforms also do a good job of like helping lower the barrier of like perfection and being like, here's where I'm at in process. And people seem to like that. That's what a lot of social media is like feeding off of, is like, oh, like I just want to know the person behind this thing, or like I want to see what they're up to. And I think I'm like, you know, on the like sort of like older end of millennial that's still kind of just like, it has to be perfect, it has to be. So that's something that the past few years I'm you know, trying to let go of.
What would you say is one thing in the past few years that really helped you realize that perfectionism isn't it?
One, I guess it's just like seeing people around who like, you know, make stuff that like I know isn't perfect, but then seeing people kind of respond to it. I think like, you know, art, especially where we're at now, where like everybody has, you know, if you have like $500, you can have like a pretty good studio, you know, so like tools are pretty cheap, so everybody gets to participate. That's why everybody's like a DJ right now, like, you know, and it doesn't, you know, we're all doing the same thing. So then it's about like, you know, art's about like just like what connecting with humanity at this point. It's not also just about what's good. It's like there are a lot of people that do things that are messy, or like, you know, I think about like the Jai Paul, like that album from like now 10 years ago is like a, you know, wonderful album that like is, you know, touched a lot of people because it was messy and it was like kind of like, you know, not following necessarily the traditional rules of like how maybe something should be produced or sound, but because it was clearly like somebody putting themselves into this thing, it had that energy. And I feel like, you know, also like balancing like putting energy and putting yourself into your art to touch people, like, you know, can like outweigh even something that is perfect. So I think that, and then even from my experience of I played in a like touring I guess like indie dream pop band a couple years ago before the pandemic, and also realizing that context has a lot to do. I remember we sent out our music pretty early on into like forming a band to like a bunch of record labels, and people got back and like, that's nice, that's cool, it's like, you know, sounds good, like let us know as things are, nobody was really like biting. And then, you know, fast forward 6 months, I think we'd finally gotten a manager on a label and starting to like tour and stuff like that. And like a lot of people, the same music, were like, this is so good, like, you know, they were like, this is like what, like, you know. And that was also very pivotal to me of like, you know, music, art is subjective in a lot of its context. So like you have to like really start with believing like what you have is like important and good, and again, be an advocate of yourself. And like even if people don't respond immediately, you can't get like down about it, because like there's a lot of stuff that I also think I would maybe say is objectively bad, but like, you know, hear it 3 or 4 times, you're like, all right, I like it, you know. So it's a balance of that, but I think it also start with you feeling good about what you're making, you know.
Got you. So this tour, how does one make a band? So guy, girl, whoever comes together and it's like, yeah, I want to play this, I want to play that. And then from making a band, how do you get to being on a tour?
I mean, it can happen in many ways, but yeah, I mean, like in my experience with that particular band, some of it's like, yeah, you form the band, you're playing music, and you should, you know, start playing shows kind of around you, hopefully building up a you know, kind of like friends and family support, like things like that. Play at local shows. I know we were like opening up for a lot of bands. A lot of just like, you know, getting people to like know that you exist.
What were the instruments that you guys had?
We were like a 5-piece band, so it was like, you know, drum, guitars, synths. You know, we did like 3-part harmonies. So it was like kind of, yeah, like, you know, classic rock format.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then what decided where you would go on this tour? Like why Europe?
A lot of times I think it's kind of routed around like if you get one prominent show or festival somewhere, that's you're like, all right, cool. Like for us, I remember our first time really traveling was we I think got invited to like South by Southwest, and so we knew we wanted to do that. And obviously you're like, well, let's try and like book some shows along the way.
What's South by Southwest?
It's just like a music technology film festival in like Austin, Texas, that like has like, you know, in the past been known for being a really good like industry event to like break bands and yada yada. So like going there and playing is helpful because you'll have a lot of different either music journalists, record labels, like booking agents, things like that. So a lot of it's like you play shows and you try to play shows in front of the white right people, white people too for sure, but the right people. And I remember that's what we were doing, where we were just like playing and we were just like trying to get in the right rooms with the right people. Definitely a lot of times white people to get like, access to resources, whether that's like, booking agents or managers or things like that. Like we got our manager / record label through like hitting them up because they repped somebody else because we wanted to open up for their show. So I think honestly, like a lot of times it's like, even if you don't have music out, one route is just playing shows, and like somebody might like see you. You never know. And I think that's like a very like 90s like Seattle cafe, like Kurt Cobain sort of model. Just like, I'm just gonna go play shows, like like somebody will see me. Now obviously we have like the internet, social media, where you can also like curate yourself in that way and people can find you that way. But I think that is what we did, is we just like tried to get together, play good music, play shows.
So you guys went to South by Southwest, and there you met someone cool who told you about a festival in Europe.
No. South by Southwest, I think we went down, we played some shows along the way. At this point, like getting to playing Europe was, we finished an album. We basically had a booking agent. So somebody whose job is to like, help route a tour, and basically like they have relationships to different venues and cities. So the ones that can be like, hey, like, especially when you're a new band, like, they're going to be like, hey, take a chance on this band. They're cool. They're buzzy or whatever. Right. They're going to be the one that's kind of like pitching in an advocate for you. Okay. But mostly because they already have relationships with these venues will take a chance. And so then they kind of set that up for you, which is really helpful. Okay. So then, like you can also do like DIY way, where like you as a band or musician can try to reach out to like venues who usually have like, booking managers, and try to pitch yourself. And you can either do like, just open up for somebody, or you could try to do yourself. But obviously a lot of it, this is like where the like, not fun finance part comes in, where they're obviously thinking about like, well, are you gonna be able to sell tickets? Who are you drawing? So the more likely you're gonna be able to like draw people, the more likely people are gonna like be responsive. So if you also don't have a draw and you're new, that's where like, trying to like get on an opening slot for somebody else is helpful too. If like, if somebody wants to take a chance on you, the music's good, they'll have you open up, so there's less pressure of you to like sell tickets, which is what we did. We did a big U.S. Tour that way, opening up for this other singer, Mia Folek, who had a kind of more prominent following and was able to sell out more, and we could like do some as well. But like,
how did you guys find them? Did you like find them in a social, or you've seen them in person?
That was another one that came through. I think we were just putting out offers through our like manager. That's where like, to me, especially as a musician, I think like, I've always been an advocate of DIY, but sometimes it's also nice to just like, you want to build a team and you want people that are like gonna be doing the work that like you can hopefully focus on, like making music or things like that. So I think that was like through our manager, who was like doing outreach to like booking agents to see if there was any like open slots. So like normally you might be like, reach out to the booking agent. Booking agent has a client who like might not have like somebody to fill that spot. And then like, manager, booking agent talk, and they're like, all right, cool. Like, you can fill the spot. So I think that's what it happens. So a lot of it's like, I guess when you can, starting out building a team or building a community. So it's also just not like one person or a few, like, like 3 or 4 people doing stuff helps a lot, especially, it can be a lot. And I think that we have an expectation as a creative to be like, all right, I'm making my product, whether it's a film or like, doing photography or music, but then I'm also like generating content around that to tell the story, to connect with people. Plus, if you're like trying to figure out how to set up opportunities for work, like it's a lot. And like, it kind of like, I don't know, can take away from just making art.
Yeah, definitely. It's the stress of trying to do a job that you don't necessarily want to do. Okay, so let's snap back to you in New York. So you started in Baltimore, great family, loving family, fostered you and put some nice resources and thought process and mindset in you. And then you went to North Carolina. Why North Carolina, by the way?
It's just where I went to school. That's just my college was there.
No, but like, what made you choose that?
I guess, primarily I was really into Japanese culture, and I studied Japanese in high school. So the school that I went to, Wake Forest, had a really strong Japanese program. So I, especially in going, really loved music, but was thinking I was probably going to like, I don't know, study international relations or go like, I don't know, be a diplomat or something like that. And as I went to college and started DJing more, I was like, nah, I'm not doing that.
So what was your major?
I majored in like communication and media studies, and then I ended up having a triple minor in like Japanese, entrepreneurship, and then actually like film and media. I guess like, yeah, just like film.
Wow.
Yeah.
Triple minor. So you had like, it's like minors to me are just like basically a major. So like you had like 4 majors.
Little less credits, but yeah, I was cramming it in. I think I was just partying and fucking around too much the first 2 years, and then I kind of got more serious. And I was like, oh my god, I'm about to like owe so much money. I need to like make this shit worth it. So
you took all the advantage of it. You said, no, I'm getting all of my money's worth.
Yeah.
Okay, and then after that, it was always a plan to go to New York. So you said school's over, so like graduation. Like let's go to the mindset of the freshly graduated Spurge. Like that summer after you're finishing, how did you get from I'm in North Carolina, maybe still had a base back in Baltimore, like how did you get to New York?
I pretty much just, I moved immediately to move back up to Maryland, and then I remember I just spent the summer at home, like, frantically applying to jobs. I was like, I want to like move to New York, but like I don't, I have no money, so like I need to get a job first. And I got a job at this talent agency, creative artist agency, probably towards the end of summer. And like, within a week or not, I think that's, being again, like what, like, I don't know, 21 or something like that. Like, you move really fast and you're able to just be like, I'm going to do this. So I recall like just getting the job, and pretty much the next week, I think I moved up. I was looking at places. I'd been looking at places online a lot. I think like roommates.com or some shit. I found my friend Gabe, who he was from like, kind of right outside Normandy in France. And he was looking for a roommate like in France, and I was kind of like, I don't know you, but sure, like, you seem cool. So like we like met each other both when we like came up to New York and looked for a place together, found a place with another friend Josh and another roommate. And yeah, I just started working there basically, and same, was just trying to like DJ, just trying to figure things out, I think just like getting here felt important. So I worked on music, did that, tumbled around a bit. I did about like a year there and was like doing like sort of like mailroom reception. It's kind of like the base level of what you do for that agency style work. And then I went into music touring and met a bunch of great people, and knew that I kind of wanted to go over to music studio stuff, because I was like, this was cool, but like I wanted to be more like in the recording aspect. So I jumped like after, I think it was like 9 months, I was in there like too long. I then like got an internship at Electric Lady, which is like Jimi Hendrix's studio over on like West 8th. Yeah. Did that for I think about like 2 months, because it was actually a really terrible experience. They just like weren't paying, and like, I was like working like 40 hours a week for free basically. Whoa. I know this was before like the Condé Nast stuff with internships, so like yeah, they were working you for free. So I did that, didn't like that, but then also like worked at this other recording studio called Black Wax, which was more kind of like a it was a very like, one mic, one room. Like it was like big for SoundCloud rap. So like people like Playboy Cardi and like Awful Records and sort of like a lot of like that. This was now probably like 2014 or 2015. So a lot of that was happening there. So I did both those for a while, but I was making no money, but it was fine. So like, 22 or something. And then I was a personal assistant for this artist, P Thug, who's in this band Chromeo. And I got that because I had no money, and through a friend. I'm a big advocate of just posting on social media whenever you need something. As you were saying, I just did it for my roommate for my apartment. I was like, I think I just, at this point, it was, it's like Facebook even. I don't think it was like Instagram. I posted on like Facebook. I was like, yo, I need a job. I'm broke as hell. And somebody was like, I have, somebody's managing this band, Chromeo, and they were like, they're on tour and they need somebody to water their plants. Like, you can do it. So I did that, and he liked the way I water his plants, so he hired me to be his personal assistant.
This is great.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah. It's just very New York. You bounce around a bunch. And like through all of this, I was making music at home. Like making interesting electronic stuff and whatnot. And still, I guess like this is like, now I've been in New York for probably about like a year or 2 years, and I just like I feel like I hadn't found a community, and I realized that was really important. was like, you can work all these like cool jobs or whatever, but like unless you feel like you have a core community, especially of creatives, like it, A, it's lonely, and B, like, it's you're not in a position to like have a peership. So I, towards the end of what was about a year of working for Patrick, he was moving to LA, and funny story, like, actually drove cross country to, transport his palm trees, because like moving companies won't transport plants because of, sort of transporting soil or bugs. It's like illegal to do. So I like rented a U-Haul and drove his palm trees to LA. But I came back and needed something new, and I'd been doing more like studio work at that point that was kind of ending, and I'd heard about this place, the Lot Radio, that had kind of just opened up. And for me, studying in London in college, I was kind of aware of like internet radio and NTS and sort of the importance that they filled in terms of being like I guess like a community space. So I think went there, or like, DM them on Instagram. I was like, hey, like, are you looking for anybody? And I got hired there and worked there for 4 years, and that's where, yeah, like, got more immersed in like nightlife culture and DJ culture in New York, which was great. I think I'd been like tertiary going out to like Bossa Nova and whatnot. Oh, hey, baby. And so it was like nice to just kind of like have something that like felt more central for like kind of accessing that. And that's where, yeah, I like started the band with my friends. Noah also worked there, and he was in the band too. He's in this band, Simon Spine, right now. That's great. And that was kind of, yeah, that just kind of became like a really like, central fixture. And I think it's, again, something that's important. Another maybe tip for like, if you're in any creative capacity trying to like build yourself up, I would say like if you can find a community, especially a physical community to engage with, that like is super helpful for obviously like meeting people that are like, you're in peership with. Again, I think that like, I don't know, finding like leaders and role models are really great, but at some point, if you want to be an artist, it's also like, who are my peers? Who can I like build with and learn with, not just like somebody I can learn from? Because, you're only going to get so much from somebody who's going to kind of like be a role model. Like, you also need somebody that you can kind of like, yeah, go play music with and be, kind of like messy creatively with and whatnot. And obviously like feel like you have a companionship and camaraderie, and that helps a lot. So,
yeah. No, I was watching an interview with Issa Rae, and she was talking about the importance of networking across. That's what it sounds like.
I feel like I've seen her say that before as well.
Yeah. So the band that you were talking about earlier, you started that here in New York and then went on tour. That wasn't in college?
Yeah, that was in New York. So I was, working here already, basically. I was working at the Lot, and it was like myself and Noah. We're both working here in like DJing and like, both like, again, like making our electronic music productions and kind of just like networking, figuring ourselves out. And then some regular of the Lot, because they basically, we would like sell coffee and stuff and like have DJs play in the other room. We had like, beers and whatnot. So like he would come and, a lot of people came and were drunk, and, it'll always be like, have some amazing opportunity, and you kind of like, all right, cool, great. But he said he had some singer that he found on SoundCloud who he wanted to make a band with. So he was like, I want you guys to be in it. And he's also British. So he was like, I want you guys to be in it. And we were kind of like, all right, cool, sure. Like, how many times you hear people say like, that. But then, he made it happen. She moved. She was from outside of Boston, more or less. And she moved here, and we all met like, it was very like making the band sort of thing. It was kind of like, all right, you guys are in a band now. We're like, all right, great, cool. And we all just started kind of like, trying to like make music together. And also like she had all these like sort of demos already written where we were like trying to like help flesh those out and, produce them. And then also like think about it from a live context. And then we brought in the drummer who Noah knew, who happened to be, he like, wanted to move from, he's British as well. So he was moving from the UK to New York to try New York out. So we like recruited him, and also got our bassist. I had this idea to like find we wanted a female bassist just for 3-point harmonies. And it was kind of hard to like figure out how to like, it's kind of specific. We're like a bassist who sings. And I ended up using Tinder and making a profile and finding it that way. And we found her off that. She just moved from Berlin. So then we had a band.
What was the Tinder profile? Like, what did you like?
It was just us. It was the band. It was like, hey, we're a band. We're like, looking for like female bassist that can sing.
That is very cool. Never heard of that.
And it worked. We got a lot of hits, but yeah, Sabine, the bassist, is the one that we were like, all right, you're cool. She also just recently moved, and was just yeah, fun person. So then, yeah, we had the band and we spent maybe about like, I think 3 months or something, just trying to like take these like demos that this like singer songwriter had made and like flesh them out into a band context. So we were just playing them. We would like rent practice spaces and play them and understand how they could sound as a band versus just like when one person's in the laptop, which is like a pretty, I think you think about like Tame Impala and a lot of these like, songwriters, that's, it's a pretty standard process of maybe one person might sort of like write the like initial music and then like a whole band will come together to make it, fleshed out more in a band context for like live and stuff like that. So we did that. Then, yeah, started playing shows, then found our management / record label, then started playing like more support shows and doing support tours. And it's kind of, you just build. I think that's, one route. A lot of people also put their music up again on like social media and maybe somebody likes it or it goes viral. But another route is like, you're in New York, you're in a place of culture and you just got to like put yourself out there. And that's like, for me, with my current project is sort of where I'm at of like, putting a couple songs out, starting to play shows, and you got to put yourself out there and more opportunities will come.
So how did you get to your current project? Like, how did you get to like, this is what I'm going to do right
now? While I was in that band still, I'd kind of started to make music that I was like, ooh, I like this. This sounds good. This sounds like me. I like where it's going. And I was like, I think, playing in that band helped a lot too. Like, I was singing more, performing more, and these are things I hadn't done because I'd been a DJ. And making electronic music. I still love making electronic music, but I was also like, enjoying exploring like singing and songwriting and these other aspects that kind of tied it all together. Where again, like I think something that I really like is like sort of like, contradictions and paradoxes. So thinking about Justice, that band that I liked in high school, where it's like, it was electronic music, but it was really like pop rock music through the frame of like this electronic music. And I think that's like, kind of like the mixing of two or three things is always interesting to me. Creating that sort of like, slight either like dissonance or sort of, again, like a paradox. I think that's, it's American existence. We are all paradoxes in ourselves, especially African American existence. Saying African American kind of doesn't really make sense. America is pillaging and all of this stuff, and we are the ones that have been pillaged and sort of like taken away. So like, I think, to me, a lot of my attraction comes from like sort of my existence of like, none of this shit really makes sense, and you throw a bunch of stuff in, and like that's what is reflective of my experience. So I was kind of like understanding that, starting to figure it out, and more or less like the band, we ended up like splitting ways, kind of like, like in 2019, like right before the pandemic, we broke up, sort of just, classic band stuff. Sort of the singer wanted to like start to take more space within and whatnot, and that wasn't really working for us from like a collaborative standpoint. So we ended up ending the project, and she carries it on, so it's sort of like her thing solo now. And yeah, I mean, I spent sort of a while grieving that after having put in a couple years of effort. Then the pandemic happened, and then it in itself was like, obviously a horrible experience, but also a blessing because it caused me to slow down. And I was just in here in this room, like writing a bunch of music, basically. And I spent that like solid year and a half, or from like 2020 through 2021, especially with the support of those great government checks and whatnot. Like I was able to like focus on kind of just like writing music and like developing my musicianship. That's that Beatles book that I had at the photo shoot was like very pivotal for me to understand even like songwriting structure and all these things, that like I had like a very specific context and framework around how to make music, from like DJing and things where it's like, you're doing 12-minute tracks. A lot of it can be like you build tension through more production techniques, or it's about repetition and rhythm and like, trance. And I felt like I had like a pretty good handle on that. So then it was like a nice challenge to think about like, I guess like harmonic movement and these other aspects that can kind of like build songs out that I was like getting through like studying the Beatles or like, Sade or like, some specific artists. So I just spent most of the year, playing a bunch of music in here and trying to like understand, like, build up my craftsmanship of songwriting and being a musician, and then also making stuff from there. So I had a pretty good batch from those 2 years, and then started kind of like cultivating it. And in the past year, kind of have made this body of work that I'm like working towards putting out. I put out the first song like 2 weeks ago called All Good. and yeah, working on, I guess, like, building out, putting out the rest of this music that's like finished for the rest of the year. And like, so I'm kind of like starting over on that journey again of like putting music out, performing, and like starting to build out a team. It's kind of like what the initial thing is. But I guess versus even the last project where it was like, a bunch of us, and there felt like, there was kind of one core person, the like singer-songwriter who took up the space. What's nice about this is it's all me. So it's like,
you get to be the singer-songwriter.
I do. And then more so it's like, it's like with it being all me, it's like, hopefully I'm not going to have to do this shit again. Like you do the building part, it's fun and it's like important. But like, hopefully you get to a place where you're like, all right, now like I have like maybe some sustainability or the resources. That way I can like just, ideally just focus on making music and having that team I was talking about around you to do. I think that's, I was listening to an interview from this artist, Mel Hines, recently, for my like day job currently, where I like run a magazine. And he said something that stuck with me of like, you have to enjoy the process up, within your artistic development. I think like what you have to do, whether again, like no matter the format, whether it's music or film or photography, you have to like show people what you can do and what your vision is at scale. So obviously like a lot of like big film directors, they start out with a small budget. Like, you might have like, I don't know, $50,000 to make a movie. If you do that really well, with that small amount of money, that's when somebody's going to come and be like, I'll invest in you again. And like, here's a bit more money and a bit more money. And go back to record labels, it's the same deal. It's like you have to start with what you have. And I think like a lot of us, again, me bringing up the Frank Ocean thing, we're like, we need to make the best thing possible. But I think again, like what's really good is like think about and like work with what you have around your constraints. That's going to allow you to also not be frozen or sort of stuck or feel like you have to like meet this like super high goal. I'm not the best at that still, because I feel like I made a really absurd project that's going to come out, in the fall that, involves a 26-minute ambling, like sort of like cinematic audio experience. So I spent way too long doing that, but that's
sounds great though.
Yeah, it's great. I'll send it to you, but it's something that I definitely know, and like I guess would also like that sentiment. Something that I like would say is like try to like remember where you're at scale, knowing that you'll always be able to scale up. Like that's just how business works.
Gotcha.
You gotta start small scale up, get more investment, and like then you'll get to a place where you're gonna get like you look at a lot of artists and like they're just making songs, fucking around, and then they get more resources and you get better, and that's how you do more. And I think like almost you want to keep your ambition in check, going back to like balancing delusion and sort of like where you're at. Like it's good to be delusional, but also be like, like maybe let me just make one song, put it out, see what happens, get feedback too. I think that's important when you're too in your head about anything, whether it's like a idea, a feeling, like getting feedback will help to sort of like ground you. And then it's about like, obviously if everybody's like, man, it shit sucks, you can be like, maybe there's some like feedback I can like take, but also I want to like remain confident in myself and delusional. But the feedback also helps. So
going back a little bit to what you said earlier about liking like in your writing process to include like I guess contradictions. So with you identifying as African American, how have you formed your identity in writing music? Because I feel like the African American community has a popular hold in hip hop and R&B, but like your music taste is more mixed. How have you come to be comfortable in that with yourself and also with engaging in like larger communities?
Yeah, good question. I think it's just like a result of my existence. Like again, I grew up in a black household, went to a black church, was in a black neighborhood, but then also like my parents put me in this like really conservative white school in like middle school and high school. So then you learn to sort of like again like you might be sort of the odd person out, and that's something where you learn to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And I think that mix kind of like comes across again with sort of like you're just taking so many different things in. And yeah, I don't know, again, like I just think that it's like more a result of just existing in this country. Like, you know, like we exist in this country that where we're told that like we can aspire to do what we want, but then there's so many systems that are actively working against that. So you're like, damn, like just everything's a contradiction.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, what can you do about it? You're like, this is still my home. It's weird to call it home sometimes. You're like, damn, my home is like kind of doesn't fuck with me. So like you're just like, but you kind of get used to it. You're kind of like, I mean, where else am I gonna go? Like, this is my home.
Right.
Like, you know, like you can't go back to Africa because the motherfuckers also like, we don't know you. I'm like, fair, you don't. Like,
I don't know you either.
Yeah, exactly. So like that's also, I think, to me, yeah, it's just like really like being comfortable with that and like accepting that is like my existence. Like, you know, there are a lot of like commonalities in something like blackness, but obviously it's still such a rich, diverse experience. And for me, like the one thing that kind of like also like really ties us together is like that it's so mixed and so like, yeah, it's not just one thing. And like that's something where, yeah, you know, in the music that I'm making, it's like pulling references from like, you know, yeah, just as much like, you know, Outkast to yeah, like Black Sabbath to the beat, yeah, like very definitely big in there. And it's kind of like, yeah, these are all things that just make up who I am. Like I'm a complicated person that contradicts myself, and like I think that's also something that's like important to sort of like present is like I don't know, I don't make sense all the time. And like obviously when you're like trying to like package yourself for promoting yourself on social media, or even just like even in meeting people, like it feels like you need to have something so linear. But like I don't know, like I like rap on some of my songs, I sing on some, I again I also like DJ, I make electronic music, so I'm just like yeah, exactly. And that's hard for marketing, that's for sure. Because like they're sort of like, well, what are you? Yeah. But like, you know, I'm just like, I don't know, I'm America, I don't know.
That's great. I'm America. So what's your overall goal with this project, short term and long term? So maybe not overall, what's your short term and long term goal?
Fair. I mean, short term right now with this project, at least that I'm working on, it's to get out this music in the you know, kind of like fall, put out this like larger project that I've recently finished up on, and start to build out the team. Kind of like what I was saying, like I feel like that's a great step of like I've, you know, I don't know, just been working on my own, like trying to get the music finished and, you know, trying to get assets around it, like music videos and stuff like that, and all the art done. And it's like really fun, and I feel very capable, but also I'm like, I just want to like work on, like, I don't know, I even was saying to you earlier when I was playing piano, like I feel like I haven't sat down and just played piano for a while, you know, versus like in the pandemic where like a lot of my days would be less like emails and setting things up or trying to finish, you know, like recorded songs. It'd be more about like, I'm just going to play guitar, play piano, and I would hopefully get to a space where I feel like I can do that again. But some of that's obviously feeling reassured that I have like some of the pillars in place to like be growing something that I want to hopefully be a sustainable career. So it'd be like initially building out the team, and then like, yeah, like ideally next year, like start to tour again. Cause I really enjoyed touring when I did it. It's fun to like travel and play your music and have people sing your lyrics and, you know, sort of like connect. And that's kind of the larger goal, I guess, is like, you know, impact people. The like, you know, short, I guess, like one sentence sort of like intent of the project is to hopefully like remind people that like, you know, small acts, really any of your actions, but like small acts of kindness, you know, can have impact that you don't always see. You know, it can be generational impacts. Like the name Elise comes from this woman who housed my grandmother when she moved from Cleveland to DC in like the 1950s. And she also was like from Cleveland, and I think was like, you know, maybe somebody my grandma kind of knew a little bit, but my grandma moved to Washington DC for more like jobs and opportunities. This woman was like, you know, you can come stay with me and get on your feet while you figure it out. So she lived with her. And then Elise ended up bringing my grandmother Marie to a party, and that's where my grandmother met my grandfather because of that. And obviously they, you know, had a family where my mom was. My mom had, you know, me and my family. And so this woman, Elise, kind of like, you know, indirectly just by trying to be a, you know, good person to help somebody out, helped, you know, like make me, you know, sort of impact me. Wow. So you think about that of like, you know, your choices can, and obviously like I've never met her, I've never known her, but like the fact that like her small act of kindness helped create my entire family lineage. And then basically my grandmother, sort of as an homage to her, gave my mom, her middle name is Elise, and then my mom did the same for my sister, whose middle name is Elise. And that's kind of a big, I guess, like the through line for this project is sort of like, I think in a time of like, things feel helpless, obviously with climate anxiety and, again, our like, fucked up country and just, feeling kind of uncertain about the future. It's remembering that like, it's not always even just like the big things that are going to be like, I guess making impact. It's also just small things like just being kind, being loving, like, looking out for people, because you don't know about like, what your act could do for somebody or impact them to a point where like, yeah, like you might help them, like again, like start generations of a family or something. So
That's an amazing story. Like, that's an amazing impact. And I just want to say here, like on camera, I appreciate you and what you're doing right now. Like taking this time, doing this interview, doing that photo shoot the other day. Like, yeah, it's your small acts make a difference and they're much appreciated.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, you're a lovely, open person, and so happy to help. And obviously, yeah, like also helps me again. Want to share my story, so yeah.
Is there anything I didn't ask here in this interview that you think that you want shared?
No, not really. It's pretty comprehensive for the most part. I think, obviously, check out the music if you're watching or sort of consuming this. And yeah, I think main thing, yeah, that's like the big things are just like, try to believe in yourself with whatever you're doing, and yeah, try to build out a support system, whether that's family or friends or peership. And then, yeah, try to remember to just like scale up. Like, don't always, I think we all have such big visions. And again, we like compare ourselves so much. We see so much online and what's happening. But try to like, start small, feel good starting small and like having a vision. Like, even if you don't have the resources, if you know what you want to do, I think like, I don't know, ability is something that we can always grow into. I think I'm a good example of that. Again, I learned my first instrument when I moved to New York. I took piano lessons when I was like 21 or 22. And I started learning the guitar like a couple years later. So I'm like, I wasn't like, I didn't grow up playing instruments or anything like that. So like, I feel like technical ability, you can always learn if you are determined to. But like taste and vision is something you just kind of like have to have. And like, even if you feel like you don't, again, like I always knew how I wanted to express, and even when I felt like I might not have had the technical ability or more cultivation, I just gave myself time to get to a place where like, again, like, I'm like putting out this project that like sure would have been nice to put out like 10 years ago when I had more energy and like, but like at the same time I'm happy for all my experiences that led me here, and like I feel like I'm in a comfortable place with myself to be able to like put it out and advocate for myself. So
yeah, I mean, you're a different person than you were 10 years ago. It's a whole new, a whole new, a lot of information that people wouldn't have or that you didn't have 10 years ago.
Yeah, a lot of learning, a lot of growing.
Yeah. Where can people find you? Where can they find your music?
I mean, you can look it up on the project's called Elise. It's ALIESE. So it's on, Spotify, Apple Music, all of that fun stuff. Instagram, all my social media is kind of just it's Elise as well, so you can find me there. And yeah, hopefully, by the fall, you can also come to some shows as I'm trying to work on my live performance and get that going for fall, winter.
Yeah, fall of 2023. Okay.